All right, everyone, let's move on and look at some more of the details of creating a dynamic workspace. You might have noticed if you've ever used the Generate Workspace dialog, there is an option under Workflow Options to use a static schema or dynamic schema. The default is static, and that assumes that FME knows the schema before running the workspace. It will add fixed reader and writer feature types with defined attributes. However, you can choose dynamic schema here, and this creates a schemaless or schema agnostic workspace with dynamic readers and writers automatically set up. So that's one option if you want to get started that way using Generate Workspace. There is also the option to add a dynamic reader when you add the reader. And so that is under workflow options in the add reader dialog. You can choose single merged feature type. As I mentioned earlier, that is dynamic mode for readers. You read the data in regardless of feature type. An important point here is that you can change this after you've added the reader by checking merge feature type. But if you do that, the feature type will still use the original feature type schema. And so if other feature types have different attributes, they'll be read but unexposed. So that is kind of an important thing to note when setting these up. You can add a dynamic writer with the add writer dialog under the definition, feature type definition mode option. There's quite a few. Just to reiterate, automatic. When you connect a stream of features, the fixed schema is set to match those features. So it allows you to kind of quickly define a schema based on the features that are in your workspace, but still fixed. Manual, also fixed, but you define the feature type names and types. Import from data set, also a fixed schema, but you can go and choose a data set you'd like to borrow or sort of define the schema from, but it won't change if that data set changes. That's the important part. It's kind of a one-time import. Dynamic is where the writer will basically write out whatever you give it. And that's what we'll be looking at here. So if you generate a dynamic workspace or create one when you're adding your readers and writers, you get a workspace that looks like this. It's kind of funny because it's deceptively simple looking. That usually looks less visually complex than a static workspace because we just don't know what to show on there. We don't know what the attribute names are. We don't know what the feature type names are. So it just says all for readers and dynamic for writers. You also are pretty much always only going to have one feature type for reader and writer shown on the canvas at a time, even if it has multiple layers or tables, because we don't know what those are in advance, so they're not defined separately and shown on the canvas. The important thing to notice about the way these work is dynamic reader reads all the features in, and they do come in a single stream of features here that will move through the workspace. And the dynamic writer receives a single stream of features, but will split things back out into their component layers and keep their original attributes and geometry type. That's kind of the whole point. So even though there's just one feature type shown here, you're very likely to generate more than one feature type when you run the workspace because it's separated back out into its component feature types. So that's the kind of basics of a dynamic workspace. It will probably become a bit more obvious how that all works when we build one and then exercise. But why don't you complete that quiz and let's take our second break and we'll come back at 10 past the hour. So go ahead and work on that and then take your break and we'll see you in a little bit.